Okay. So my name is Mr. Mastara. I'll be working together with Mrs. Chidemo in this particular course. I don't know if you guys can hear me. Can anyone hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, we can.
All right.
Yes,
That's good. Thank you. We have. Sorry, I wasn't able to attend yesterday's lecture. There was a clash in the timetable. I was taking another class yesterday. I was finishing up with another class, so I had to forfeit that class for today. Okay, but I think we will be able to manage our time. And so managed to install that. Maybe we can show by responding in the chat if you managed to install Anaconda. So far, Rugare said that she managed to install. Okay, yeah, there's quite a number of responses about those who've managed to install. Okay. Now, amongst those who have installed, were we able to run Jupyter Notebook? Okay. So Mina is saying yes, we were able to run Jupyter Notebook. And then for those who ran the Jupyter Notebook, did you manage to upload the notes that I gave to the class rep? Okay. Everyone is just saying that they managed to do so. Okay. Kandenga said no, and Muranga said no. I'm not sure what they did not manage to do, to install or just to upload. But based upon the number of people who managed to install, I'm sure it's not difficult. It's quite simple. Although many times, and most of the times, those people did not manage to install, it's because they didn't get the chance. But there are those people who might not know how to install. Okay, so if you Nyoni gave us a link for installation. I think let me just put that in the notes. Okay. So I suppose for those of us who have not managed to do so, we can make use of the link that was provided by Nyoni. Mary, you said you're trying again. It means you tried to install before and you failed. What happened? She's saying it was installing halfway. I don't know why. What operating system are you using? One of the issues that might cause that maybe is the version of your machine. Your machine is either 32-bit or 64-bit machine. So when you're downloading the file, like Nyoni highlighted, say your machine bit size, just confirm whether you are downloading the right type of file, and then try to make sure that otherwise would need to see what the error was saying. So I don't know if maybe when we have a break, we can have one-on-one sessions with those people who are failing to install. Okay. For now, we will not worry about installing. Ideally, I would have loved to have everyone running their own version of Jupyter Notebook. Okay, Nepera, you said it's not installing the menus. Well, it's not installing on the menu, maybe on Windows startup menu. Is that what you mean? Because you might not need to interact with it through the startup menu every time. I think it provides an opportunity to launch it not necessarily from the Windows startup menu. I think you can try to type the command. I think it's just Jupyter. No, yeah, just try to say Jupyter-notebook and see if it will fire up. Or you can just say Anaconda in the command prompt. I don't know, just if you click on Windows start button and if you click on, I can't remember. I'm not on Windows these days. Okay, if you click on Windows start button in the search box, you click on CMD and you type enter, and then in the command you see a black window, which is a command prompt window, and then in that window, if you say Jupyter-notebook or Anaconda, if you can try by saying Anaconda, and then you say enter. Maybe you can try that as well. I don't know if you tried that or I'm getting the error correctly, but I'm just suggesting someone might appreciate that information. Okay, so before, I don't know if there are any other pending issues before we proceed, but I think we might start now. Okay. Maybe let's go to the course outline. Okay, so I just want to change a few things because it's no longer MSCDA 601, but it's now 606, and it's no longer, the nomenclature is changed as well. Now it's analytics of programming. Okay. So most of us, we don't know what programming is, but we'll talk about that and we'll discuss about that. Or maybe we can just talk about it now. What are we referring to when we talk about programming? What is programming? Anyone can respond. If you do have audio, you can just unmute your mic and quickly respond. Right now I don't have, there's just one I can see. I didn't want to respond. What do you mean? What are we referring to when we're talking about programming? All right, it seems like we are still shy to respond to to some of these questions. Okay, but basically we're talking about writing or giving instructions to the computer that are that the computer itself can interpret or understand. Okay, so that is basically a very basic definition of programming. We just giving instructions to the computer that the computer itself is able to interpret or to understand. And when it is understood the instruction, it is able to execute. Okay, so when we are doing our programming, we should be using a language that the computer itself can understand. So there are languages that have been created by people which the computer can understand, and one of them is Python. Okay, we might have our own ideas of other languages that are used for programming. I don't know if anyone is familiar with. Okay, but maybe let me just mention these. I think the class is still shy, but I'm sure we've heard about programming languages such as Java and C and JavaScript, HTML, and so forth. Okay, so those are other programming languages. What we're saying is the computer itself can interpret what you've written, and after it is interpreted or understood what you've written, it's able to respond by executing the instruction. So we are going to be when we are doing the programming, there's need for you to make sure that everything, every little space and every dot and every everything that you're putting in your code or your script is the computer is able to understand what it means. In other words, it should be something that the computer is expecting. Okay. So that is what we have for programming. For those of us who've never done programming before. By the way, I'm recording the session for the sake of those perhaps who might be wondering. I'll be recording the session. I think I'm recording. So if anyone would need the recording, it will be available afterwards. Okay. And so Python is one of the popular languages nowadays, and that's the one that we're supposed to be using in this particular course. Okay. Although it is ideally we'll just be discussing programming in general, but for us to grasp the concept easier or quicker, we probably need to talk about it based on a particular programming language. Okay. Okay. What's I'm not sure why Stalin is saying thanks and Randy they're saying thanks. Maybe they can explain it on. Okay, so Python has become one of the most popular dynamic programming languages, along with other languages such as Perl and Ruby. Okay, but we chose Python in this particular course because of the way that it is designed. It is able to adopt to different programming environments. If you talk about functional programming, object-oriented programming, and even procedural, in a way, you can talk about Python. Okay, so that's one of the reasons why we chose Python. Right. And it is also said to be interpreted. Okay, in other words, it is not going to be compiled, but it's just going to be executed. And then whilst you're running, that's when you're going. So it displays errors after you've run your script. Although when it depends on the platform which you're using for running your script. Some platforms or IDEs, which we call integrated development environments, or software that you use for writing your Python program. Some of these, they assist you when you type an error. Okay, so that is helpful. That is useful. I know some general purpose IDEs like Visual Studio Code. For those of us who might want that assistance when typing their programs, you can download an IDE like Visual Studio Code. And there's also another one that will be, I think, talk about later, which is specifically going to designed for this purpose. Okay, so we'll talk about those. We'll talk about that. So because of its ability to adapt to functional programming, it also has the ability to perform much like other some of those languages like R, which are more specifically designed for functional purposes, such as mathematical calculations. Okay, so to some extent, Python is able to exhibit those properties. So it has been used for scientific computing, in industry and academic research. So it is used across the board. So it one of the reasons why it is very useful is that it is a very big and very huge library support, which provides functions that are useful in many various application areas. You can talk about many libraries, such as those for machine learning, libraries that there are many libraries for machine learning that make it very, very easy to do many complicated tasks. Okay, so that's one reason. And you find that even someone who has no programming background is very easily able to adapt to those tasks and be able to implement those tasks using Python. Also for data manipulation, you'll find that that's what we'll be looking at in the module. Okay. So those are some of the areas that we'll cover. Of course, we need to talk about the basic syntax, the functional notation, and so forth. That's just what we'll be looking at in this module. Okay. We will also highlight the use of many of these libraries, such as matplotlib, okay, and pandas. So at the end of the day, the student should have an understanding of basic programming. You should be able to handle and manipulate data, okay, and you should be able to make use of data for machine learning purposes, okay. Okay, so I think that's what we'll do. Introduction, data types, functions and loops, OOP concepts, NumPy, pandas. Okay, natural language processing and web scraping. Okay, so that's what we'll be looking at this time around. So having discussed the course outline, let's proceed to our notes. Ideally, I would have preferred to run your notes from Jupyter Notebook itself. Okay, for the sake of those who have not yet managed to install Jupyter Notebook. So yeah, so let me just do the screen share again, because for the sake of those who have not yet managed to install the Jupyter Notebook, okay, we are forced to use screen share. Okay, so this is our environment, and I'm sure you're used to getting notes perhaps in PowerPoint and so forth. But I was just trying to make sure that everyone does have Jupyter Notebook running on their machine. Because if you have Jupyter Notebook on your machine, you won't have any reason for you to say I'm not following or I can't understand. Because what we have is we have the theory, example, and the platform for trying out the examples all in the same place. You can see that what we also have code, okay, and we have the notes at the same place. Okay, so why I did this is you are reading your notes, and whilst you are reading, then you have the demonstration right below where you are reading. This is very useful for those, especially for those who have not done programming before. I think for those who have done programming, they wouldn't worry so much. But for those who haven't done programming, it would be very helpful for you whilst you're reading to be able to run those programs. Okay. So when I remember at some point our lecturer gave us some programs. When you would then go home and you try to run those programs, they were not running at all. Some of them, they had a lot of error. It's because we used to get these notes in class, and then you write them down on paper. And then when you try to run that on a computer, you find that you have all these errors, and you wonder what happened. But this is very convenient for you guys. Learning is made easier because you're able to try the examples even whilst we're having the lecture. Okay. So before we proceed, I don't know if there are any questions or anything else that needs to be said. I think you can see my screen. I can't see anyone in the lobby right now. I can't see anyone in the lobby. So now someone has appeared. So I'm sure. Just tell them to try to continue trying to enter the classroom. All right. So what you can do is, I hope we have all managed to launch our notebook environment, and we've made preparations to start. Okay, Mtaki is asking, I have Jupyter Notebook on my machine. How do I open it? Which operating system are you using, Mtaki? Is it Windows or Linux or Apple? Okay, it's on Windows. Those on Windows, how do you launch Jupyter Notebook? But if I'm not mistaken, yeah, maybe you can respond, because I myself am using Linux. Okay, Emmanuel said Jupyter-lab in command prompt. Anyone else using another, perhaps a slightly different method? Did you all use the same method, Jupyter-lab? Okay, Kodakwashi is because you're viewing my screen. It's my screen which is doing that. So don't worry about the many windows that are opening. My screen is doing that because I'm sharing my screen. So whilst I'm sharing my screen, is displaying my screen again in that window in my browser. So okay, you went the route of opening Anaconda first, and then after opening Anaconda, you can then click on Jupyter tab. Well, that's another way of doing it. Although we don't really have to run Anaconda, because Anaconda itself may be a bit heavy for some machines. You can just run Jupyter Notebook without the Anaconda. So Moses also mentioned Jupyter-Notebook on command. Okay, so those are some of the methods for doing that. I mean, and someone is asking, is Jupyter Notebook web-based? Yes. The software itself, we're running it on a web browser. Okay. So, but we are not connected. You don't need to be connected to the internet to run the software. We are just running it from a browser, but we don't need to be connected to the internet. Okay, Randy provided a URL that you can place in your browser. But I think it might not be the same for everyone, especially based on the fact that you can see that you are providing a link to the file in your machine. You're saying, desktop lecture 1.ipn. So not everyone will have it there. So you can just leave it at localhost and then Kellogg 8890. But that is just your machine probably, which is this specific port 8890. Other machines might be having a different port number that has been used for that. Mine is running on port I can't remember, but it might be 8888, as you can see. Mine is 8888, and I think that's probably the default. So if you try localhost Kellogg 8888, but for you to be able to do that, you need to run Jupyter Notebook or Anaconda first. Okay, so someone is saying, what is Anaconda really? And that's a good question. Anaconda is just a package of software. It's a collection of software that are based on Python. Okay, I think it's a collection of software that's based on Python. Some of these packages they provide, and it is based on what you want to do. we specifically want to use Python for learning. Okay, so because we want to use Python for learning, Jupyter Notebook is the best platform for us. Obviously, a similar question is, what is Jupyter Notebook? Well, Jupyter Notebook is just a platform that provides the ability to run your Python programs whilst adding some notes at the same time. It was designed as a way for allowing collaboration. I think it was a PhD student who designed that for the sake of reproducible research. That is, being able to show how they came up with that platform. Okay, I don't know if you can see these notes that I'm adding, the shared notes there. Did you see? Are you able to view them on your personal machines? So that I may just put the guide on how to launch that again, because I mentioned it before. I see Mion is asking about command. All right, so let me just write here in the shared notes to say launching from command prompt. So when you are launching Jupyter Notebook, from command prompt, how do we do that? Click on Windows Start button. Then after that, in the search box, type CMD. Okay. And then after that, in the black command prompt window that appears, type Jupyter Notebook. I'm not sure, maybe it's possible in the Windows, in the search box. You can try to type Jupyter Notebook in the search box itself. I'm not sure if that will work as well. Okay, Mutaki is saying, how should I open it? Should I use Explorer or Chrome? Well, it's just depending on which browser you prefer. Personally, I would prefer Chrome. Okay, well, okay, someone had already responded. And Mutena is saying, if I have installed Anaconda, I can launch Jupyter offline. Yes, Jupyter works offline together with Anaconda. They work offline. You don't need to have internet for you to be able to run those. Okay. So maybe some of us don't have an idea what we are talking about. Maybe you can see my screen. I myself am running Linux, but my version of Linux is very similar to Windows. So here I want to run Anaconda. You can see I have just typed the command Anaconda. Okay. I've just typed the command Anaconda and I say enter. Fortunately, it might end up making my machine the conda. Well, how did I run Anaconda last time? Well, I just can't remember how I ran it last time. I thought I did. I just typed Anaconda. Courage is saying, I used the Windows search box to launch and it worked. So you can see that maybe in my shared notes I can just so I can just edit that and say in the search box type Jupyter Notebook. Okay, sorry for taking so much time on this, but some of us, some of those in class might not have an idea what this is all about. Okay, so but Anaconda itself is just a package. It's just a software package, which is a collection of softwares that provides libraries and platforms, which are software platforms that allow you to do various things, and which are specifically or especially based on the Python programming language. Okay, so it's a software. I don't know if can anyone think of an example which is similar to Anaconda, which maybe we can talk about. Maybe for those of us, since we are in industry, maybe some of us have used SAP. In SAP is one software, but it has other types of software that you can do many different things. And someone is saying, can I not use Python? Certainly you can use Python. I'm using Jupyter Notebook for the sake of because as I mentioned, it is ideal for learning. Okay, and it's provided a URL which we might allow us to make use of it online. So let's just put that in the shared notes as well. Okay. All right. So if you see multiple screens, it means that is correct. It's my screen which is showing multiple screens. Don't worry about that. So to upload the notebook, what do? You go to the interface for Jupyter Notebook. Okay, and I think are you able to see this screen? Who asked the question? It's Ngonizashi Nyamuta. Are you able to see this screen? If you're able to see this screen, then what you do is you browse to the folder where you have your notebook. Ideally, you can just place it on the desktop because the desktop I can see that it's already there. Okay, so if you just place it on the desktop, you click on desktop, and then you look for the notebook file, which is the i.ipynb file. You look for it on the desktop. You go to it on the desktop, and then you click on the file. I think you should be able to start that way. Okay. So that's for uploading now. All right. Now I think that's enough about the background information. I hope we've understood what Anaconda is and what Jupyter Notebook is. But you'll find that Anaconda will also provide, I think it will also provide PyCharm. So for exam and for other purposes, you would prefer to use an IDE such as PyCharm, okay? Because it gives you some help when you are doing your, maybe I'll introduce everyone else to that environment a bit later on. Okay, so let's proceed with the lecture. So we are told that Python is a modern, easy to learn, object-oriented programming language. And when I was talking about object-oriented programming languages, what are we saying? we are saying that it we've defined programming. Okay, and I've said that there are quite a number of categories of programming languages that we can talk about. We've talked about procedural programming language, such as C. They are procedural programming languages. Then there are other languages that were developed to be visual programming languages. They were developed and referred to as visual languages, such as VB.NET, C#. Okay, and then, but there are also other languages that are said to be object-oriented, and there are also languages that are said to be functional. Okay. Someone mentioned something. Who is it? I didn't hear what you said. Okay. No one is responding, so maybe it was a mistake. All right. So I think we've heard about these category or types of programming languages. We've heard, perhaps we've probably heard about them before. And so, what is a programming language anyway? Can anyone respond to that? What is a programming language? Oh, this time I think it's very convenient. In the classroom, you'd be busy wondering whether you should hide under the desk. But now everyone is just hiding behind their computer. But it's also good to participate.
Okay, Mr. Mastera.
Yes, you can proceed, Mr. Young.
Well, I think a programming language is any type of software or application that allows you to write what we call code or instructions that can then be compiled or processed to execute a certain task within the computer environment. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. I think we heard what Mr. Yoni said. Fazai also said a language that a computer can understand. Colin said a set of instructions that produce various kinds of output. And Primrose said is a formal language comprising of a set of instructions that produces various kinds of output. Okay. Thank you very much for your responses. But you can see that there's a lot of similarity amongst all these responses. Okay. Why? We are all saying that, okay, sometimes it's awkward to define a language using a language. But it's a set of instructions that are at a higher level than the type of instruction that the machine or the computer itself is able to read. Why? Because a computer is able to read machine instructions, which are a series of ones and zeros. Okay, but there's someone who has come up with another set of instructions, which are probably in a form that the computer can understand, which tell the computer what to do when someone provides some kind of an instruction at a higher level. Okay. So is what we're highlighting is correct, but I just wanted to help everyone who has no experience with programming, no prior experience with programming, to understand that the computer itself cannot understand. In its natural state, it won't be able to understand as an English-like statement, like print. So someone else has come up with a set of instructions that will tell the computer what to do. If someone provides the instruction to say, for example, print, it's like an interpreter, okay, that interprets what we are saying at a higher level and telling the computer what to do in response to what we have said at that higher level. Okay, so thank you very much for all these responses. So we are saying Python itself is one of those, is one example of those set of instructions. Okay. And so once you're providing these instructions, they have to be recognizable. They should be in a syntax that the computer can understand to say, oh, this means that. Okay, so you find that it is very important. You won't just put a full stop wherever you want. You won't just put some space wherever you want. Everything has to be according to the predefined rules, just like in any other language. It's also a language, Python, but it has its own set of keywords, its own set, and so forth. Okay. So that's what we'll be doing in this. That's what we are referring to as Python, as a programming language. But not only is it a programming language, but this time we're saying it's object-oriented, which is another paradigm that will provide a complication for those of us, especially for those of us with no exposure, no pre-exposure to programming, but it's not too difficult to understand. But what we are just saying is it's an approach to programming that views the world through what we call objects. Okay, so everything that you want to do is you need to define an object when you're writing your code. So that is object-oriented programming, but well, you don't have to worry about that for now. So, but what you'll see, realize that we will be talking about classes and functions as well in Python. Yeah, and we're told that it has a powerful set of built-in data types and easy-to-use control constructs, which we are going to be making use of. And commands are executed through an interpreter. So Jupyter Notebook is just one such interpreter. Okay. Python is a great general purpose programming language on its own. And so we're going to be making use of NumPy, SciPy, and Matplotlib, which are going to be our environment. Okay. And it is hard to say that Python is a high-level language. What we are simply saying is that it is at such a level that is closer to be understood by a human being than a computer itself. Okay, so that's the beauty of Python. And it's dynamically typed, multi-paradigm programming language. We have mentioned that it is able to adapt to many programming environments. So we are able to use it for many different purposes. Okay, so that's the beauty of Python as well. So, and we're told that it is said to be almost like it's just easy to interpret. Now, one thing that we want to take note of is there are currently different supported versions of Python, and anyone is any right to install any version of Python that they desire. But you'll realize that the more recent version of Python will usually have some inconsistencies with the previous versions. So once you install a recent version, then you might not you'll find that it will provide some errors when you try to run the same code that you were using with a different version. So there are minor syntactical changes in every version of Python. So you just have to be sure that when you encounter an error, it is not because of those problems or syntactical changes. Okay. So what maybe I will need to show you what these errors will look like, but I'm sure once you start on your notebook platform, you'll be able to see what we're talking about. Okay. And then why Python? I think in your course big data analytics, the main thing that you'll be talking about, I think in almost every module, is big data. So you need to associate your module, what you're reading in that module, with big data to say what significance does this particular knowledge that is being introduced to us have in order to empower us when it comes to dealing or managing or working with big data. Okay. And maybe you've already started hearing that big data has to do with the volume, velocity, veracity, and variety aspects. When we're talking about volume, we're saying that the data is coming in huge quantities. Okay, or that the data is stored in huge quantities. Okay, that's a characteristic of big data. Velocity implies that high speed of flow of the data, which we are needing to store. Veracity implying that the data itself is very uncertain, and the levels of reliability are very unpredictable. And variety implies that the data itself is coming in different forms. Some of it is structured, some of it is not structured, and so forth. So those are the characteristics of data that you'll be dealing with. And Python is able to adjust to these characteristics. Okay. One of the best approaches for dealing with this type of data in terms of analysis is through the use of algorithms and models. Okay. One of the best approaches for dealing with this data is through the use of algorithms and models. And for some of us, the term algorithm might be a big word, I suppose. But we're not talking about an algorithm. We're just referring to maybe predefined set of instructions that procedurally flow from one to the other. Okay, that might be an algorithm, and we are saying algorithms can handle general or routine tasks very well. So because an algorithm
is already predefined. It knows that if this happens, what is supposed to happen in response to that which has happened. And if you are dealing with data which is maybe voluminous, an algorithm is able to handle such data very well. But there's also need for those algorithms to be able to adapt to those aspects such as veracity and predictability of the data, together with the variety nature of the big data. So modules are also able to adopt, because it's not just a set of instructions, but these instructions are able to learn from past mistakes, okay, or to adapt to new environments. So that's the purpose of modeling. And so it allows us to talk about, to some extent, to talk about machine learning, okay, where the machine itself, it is able to automatically self-improve, noting and learning from its past mistakes. So that is why we have Python in this particular module. At the same time, Python possesses the following characteristic features. It is readable, easy to learn, cross-platform, open source, large standard library, free, advanced features, automatic memory management, etc. Okay, so it has many advantages in general. So for those of us who've never done programming, I hope we are not confused at this point. I hope we've understood, because we've introduced many things to you at the same time. We've introduced Anaconda, Jupyter Notebook, Python, and you're trying to separate between the three. But have you understood what you're talking about? Class. I'm waiting for anyone to respond. For those, especially for those who have never done programming before, have we understood what we are talking about here, or what we've introduced to you? We've introduced Anaconda, we've introduced Jupyter Notebook, and we've introduced Python itself. Okay. So thank you for the response. Tim San said understood. And Mufaro saying understood. And okay, the reason why I'm pausing for that is because sometimes we just it's just easy to overlook very simple things, especially since I'm used to perhaps teaching students who are already familiar with programming. So you neglect to say some things, and you find that your audience will come to the end of the semester without appreciating very simple things. Okay, so thank you for your responses. Those who are saying that they've understood, those who have not had the exposure to programming before. Okay, so it's not complicated, it's very simple, and it's so simple that even for those of us who have never done programming before, to be able to adapt to the task at hand. Okay. Now, all right, so I think everyone is just mentioning how that they are following. Okay, so what are our typical Python applications? These are just random applications I found. It has been used for web development, game development, machine learning, and artificial intelligence. Data science and data visualization. Okay, of course, when you're using a platform in all these specific areas of application, you will need what we're referring to as libraries. That is a collection of functions or code which is written prior to use, which can just be imported into your application. Okay, so you can just import these that you are referring to as libraries, which is just a collection of code that has been written by someone else prior to you using them. So usually the person who provides the library is not the person who developed Python itself. Okay, it's just someone else who wanted to use the Python for some specific application area, and so they made use of that library of code, which can be used to do things that are application specific, such as web development. You can talk about frameworks such as Django. Okay, it allows you to do web development. And then for things like game development, there's this software that it's just keeping my mind the name of that software that you can use to come up with the real 3D images, that is based on Python as well. And machine learning and artificial intelligence, they are very popular libraries that will be also highlighting in this course. And data science and data visualization, we'll also be doing that. And so we also have graphical user interface. You can develop a program that has this kind of interface instead of always running Python or running your application from command prompt and viewing the result in the command prompt or in the Jupyter notebook. You can run a program which creates a graphical user interface. So you'd also need libraries for you to be able to do that. You have web scraping, business applications, audio and video applications, CAD, embedded applications, which are more lower level now. So I just mentioned here that at master's level, our task is not limited to learning the language, but to appreciate the application of the language based on the assumption that we are familiar with the concept of programming. Okay. It's just in an ideal scenario, but of course we are not all familiar with the concept, I think it's just it's an assumption. It's just an assumption which is based on an ideal scenario, but of course we're not all familiar with the concept, so that we have a double task in this module. Whilst we're learning this module, not only to familiarize ourselves with the concept of programming, but also to understand how specifically Python it is useful for many different application areas. So I'll be choosing. My task is to choose any of these application areas, so as to demonstrate unto you why Python, and maybe so that you appreciate why Python is good for that, and also in a way trying to not only limit our thinking or our scope to Python, but to programming languages in general. Okay, so someone was had a question and said, please come again on what are libraries. Okay, libraries, it's a collection of code that is going to do some predefined task. Okay, it's some code which is supposed to allow you to do predefined tasks. It's a collection of code or statements that are supposed to allow you to do the end of some predefined tasks. And these libraries are usually specific to the application area of that library. Okay, so someone is saying how are libraries different from algorithms? Libraries, this is a set of code. Okay, libraries are code itself, but an algorithm, it's sort of like an algorithm is sort of a instructions that are pseudocode. It's sort of instructions that you is a set of steps that you define, which you want to use to be able to achieve a certain end. And these are not specifically written in code, but I can write my algorithm on paper. Okay. I think there are people who might also be interested in responding to that. You can see that people are typing. I'll allow them to type and to contribute to that conversation or discussion there. Oh, okay, that's another question. Which libraries are used for machine learning, artificial intelligence? You'll find that there are libraries like NumPy and Matplotlib and so forth. Those are the libraries that are used. Okay, there's quite a number of them, and we'll be using some of these in our course. Okay, so and for us to use these libraries, it's not too complicated. Someone has created the code for us, and our task is just to make use of what you see. You understand it better when we are using the libraries. Okay, because what we'll be doing is you'll just be saying from this library do this specific task. Okay, what we're doing is we're using a function which is already defined in that library to do some task that you may want to do. Okay, any other questions? Okay, it seems like perhaps the questions have been answered. Right. Now, I don't know if we're all familiar with Google Trends, but it's just trends.google.com. I wanted to see how popular Python has been over the past 5 years. Okay. How familiar Python has been over the past 5 years. So you can see that based upon our graph, we are not, our choice of language in this module is quite a relevant choice. It helps us to be in line with what is there in the world today. Okay. So that's just why I put this graph. It's just for us to appreciate whether whether we are learning things that are relevant. But Python is a very relevant language. It seems to be gaining popularity, I think, except for this part where perhaps due to the impact of COVID, you can see that the graph is slowly declining, I suppose. But generally, we can say that Python is quite popular, especially for these tasks which are related to big data nowadays. That's really why. That's one reason why it's very popular. But where big data is not involved, well, you might be interested in other platforms, but especially when you want to do things like artificial intelligence and working on big data, then you will need to appreciate the use of Python. Someone asked and said, what is the difference between libraries and functions? Does anyone want to respond to that? What is the difference between libraries and functions? Okay, I see no one is typing. But a library is a collection of functions. Okay, a library is a collection of functions. So we can think of the library as a container of functions. And the function itself is a container of code, a collection of code. And usually we make use, we express our code through the use of functions, because functions will group together code that is related for some specific purpose. Okay, functions are used to group together code that is related for some specific purpose. Do we understand what? I hope we've understood. For those questions that we had, someone asked what are libraries. I hope you understood what I said in terms of what libraries are, and in terms of the difference between algorithm and library. I hope you understood as well. And so at the basic level, we have what can I use to draw? I didn't think I would need to do that, but I'm just thinking that I should have had a whiteboard. But at the basic level, we have code. This code is contained in functions. These functions can also be grouped together using classes, and these classes can also be contained within these libraries. Okay, for the sake of reusing. Now, the library concept is now for the sake of reusing the same code later on, perhaps in another program, not in the current program I'm developing. But when it's just a matter of me grouping code that I want to use right now, I can well use functions and classes for that purpose. So functions and classes are just containers of code, just used to group similar code together. Okay, but we have sort of like a hierarchy there, where you have statements of code at the very bottom. In the middle, you have functions, and on top of functions, you have classes. So classes ideally should group together functions, and these functions ideally group together code, statements of code. Okay. So in an ideal case scenario, that's what we should have. All right, so let's proceed. So this is for setting up and installation. I did have this instructions for setting up. The good thing about installing Anaconda itself, and not just Python, Jupyter Notebook. Okay, is that Anaconda comes with a set of libraries that you can just import and use, some of which we need to use in this course. Okay, I can't remember the command for launching Anaconda. I wanted to show you okay, it's probably Anaconda -navigator, so that I may show those who have not installed
the environment itself. I didn't want to launch it before because it will make my machine a bit slow. But I thought maybe. All right. So this is for those who haven't installed. This is what was being asked about to say what is Anaconda. Okay, so you can see that it's a collection of environments that are based mostly on Python. So you can see that Spider is a Python development environment, and PyQt is also a Python development environment together with Jupyter. Okay, so this is our Anaconda, and if you want to launch Jupyter Notebook from there, you then click on launch. Okay, so there are libraries that are included in the Anaconda environment, such as I can't remember. See, we want to use NumPy. Okay, so you can see, I don't know if you can see, but you can see that NumPy is already installed for us. And we'll also be using matplotlib. See that we have matplotlib there. It's checked to show that it's already installed together with other packages. So you can see that the advantage of Anaconda is that it provides other platforms. Okay, many platforms. You can also launch Anaconda on your machine, I think, using the same command, Anaconda navigator. Okay. Just like we launched it from, as previously we did it from, what was that? We launched it from the search box in your Windows, so we can do the same in Courage. You're saying your Anaconda is not showing descriptions. Why? Maybe can you give us a screenshot of what your Conda is looking like? I'll allow you to. Was that the same question that was asked previously? Oh, the class is so big I cannot delocate you in the class list. Okay, I'm making you a presenter. Is it okay? If I make you a presenter so that you share your screen, Courage. Because why I'm doing this is someone else might be experiencing the same problem. So if we handle one's problem, we might be solving many problems. Courage said yes, it's okay. Okay, so I'm allowing Courage to share. You can look for screen share and then you share your screen. Courage. So whilst he's trying to do so, we can just proceed a little bit. So you can see that we have our Hello World program. I think the first task in programming is to greet the world. Okay, so we also need to greet the world in
Python. But in this particular case, my greeting was a bit different this time, where I just maybe let me do so, because it would make the people well. Okay, so you can see that's Courage screen. I'm sure everyone can see Courage screen. So he's saying Anaconda is not showing descriptions. It's because you've clicked on the tab to the left. You see you clicked where it's saying environments. Just go and click where it's saying home. Yes. So I think that's what you meant here. And the good thing is his version of Anaconda is also including PyCharm. Mine did not include PyCharm. Okay, so you can see that for those for you guys, some of you also have PyCharm in your environment, so you'll be able, you can run your Python programs using PyCharm. We are using Jupyter Notebook for the purpose of learning. Okay, so Courage, are you answered? Have you been answered, Courage? Oh, I don't know if you can hear us, but that's what we have. Okay, so let's proceed with the notes. So I said usually our task is in programming is to start with creating the world. Yeah, I want to create a simple Python program. If I say print, hello world, and I run, this is an example of what we've been talking about. Okay, this I've told the interpreter to print, okay, something. What is it that I want to print? When the interpreter experiences this print, it recognizes that this is a command which tells me to print. Okay, so when it encounters that, then it expects some brackets. Okay, and in the brackets it's expecting an apostrophe. Inside the apostrophe, whatever I'm going to put there, it knows that that's what it is supposed, what the computer is supposed to print or display. Okay, so you can see that this is the output of running this array together. Now, I want everyone, especially if you've never tried, to type that command inside. You saw how I did it. I created a box. I created a what do you call it? A section for running code using the plus button in my interface. So if I click on the plus, it's giving me another section there which I can use. So if, for example, I want to make this to convert it to notes, I would come to this part and say markdown. So if you want to put your own notes, you can use that. Okay, but if you want to run code, you make it code there. And so I want everyone to try and run the command print hello world. And if you encounter an error, please highlight. So as I've mentioned before, this screen will have multiple. The multiple screens are coming from my screen, so you don't have to worry about that. Don't worry about the multiple screens. It's because I'm sharing my screen and you are viewing my screen, which is shared. So if we all run the command, please, may I have feedback there? For those of us who have installed. So first, Matambo, have you launched Jupyter Notebook? I've just given you instructions on how to create a new box or section where you can enter your code. Maybe let me demonstrate again. I was saying I think you have this in your notes, the section where it says hello world, but you don't have this. Okay, I think it was just looking like this. So if I click on hello world, the section that's written hello world, and I click on the plus, okay, I click on the plus, inside the little dialog box that appears, that's where you're supposed to write your code. Jackson Jack is saying a black screen. Leslie Rugal is saying Jackson Jack, I don't know what that error is all about. I'm surprised. I didn't expect that. Leslie Rugal, I have, when I press enter, when you have finished, you don't press enter, but you click on run. Okay. When you're finished, you click on run. Jackson Jack, maybe that black screen is worrying. I don't know what that is all about. Are you willing to show us your screen, Jackson? Okay, so I'm going to make you a presenter and you share your screen. So right now, Jackson, you can see where, look for the screen share button, and then you share the screen and show us. Okay, so Robin, can you just share with us the code that you put there on the public chat? Robin, put the code.
Okay, that's where I am. That's the screen that I'm
Okay,
in.
Jackson, you are using the interface that you're using is not the one that you should be using. Go to your browser. No, don't close. Don't close that one. Just
okay.
Minimize.
This one, yes. Where is it now?
There's two of us here.
Can you hear me, Jack?
Yes, I can hear you.
Don't close the black window, but just minimize the black window.
Okay.
Go to your browser.
My notebook browser.
Inside the browser.
Where is it now? Anaconda. Yeah, I think
is it that I cannot hear or something?
I'm also.
Sorry, it seems like my headphones were not working, so I couldn't hear what you were saying. Just a second, I need to adjust.
Okay. This one. No.
Okay, Jackson, what were you saying? I can hear now.
I'm after sharing the screen, I'm now failing even to minimize this screen now. The Anaconda.
Okay, maybe your machine is now found it too heavy.
Maybe I can stop sharing, then I minimize it, then go to the browser.
Mm-hmm. And then from the browser, I'm not sure how to start the Jupyter notebook inside the browser, but you can try to say http://localhost colon 8888. Just try that.
Okay, yeah, because it's also okay. Let me try that one. Then
Okay,
if
so,
I come back to you.
All right, that's fine.
So I'm stopping sharing the screen now.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm taking the right. Okay, so if and then who was saying that so Jackson, you can mute your mic now. Yeah, thank you. Okay. Okay, it's Sungai, invalid syntax. What's the code? So I said that please share with us, Tungai, the code that you put yourself. But you should say print. Where is it? I said print hello world. Now after typing print hello world, I will then click on run, and this should display hello world at the bottom. Okay, that's fine. All right, so I think now we are all together. Someone said yeah, someone highlighted that you can also press Shift Enter to run, which is for those of us who like using keyboard shortcuts. So I just put that in the notes as well. Okay. So Manyumba is saying not connected. He's saying not connected. Oh, that is a different thing altogether. What is saying not connected? Where are you seeing this error to say not connected? I think I need to highlight that. Okay. Just show us, tell us where it's saying not connected. I think I might be able to help better there. Otherwise, okay. So you can see that it didn't have to be compiled before it was executed, but all that needed to be done is to interpret the code and to run it. So that's one reason why we have said that imagine that I type one day. If I say run, it's going to just run. Okay. If I say 1 + 1 and I say run, it's giving me the result. Okay. And if I say 5 times 8, so 5 times 8, and if I say run, it's giving me the result. Okay, so that is why we say it exhibits properties of functional languages like R. Okay, for those of us who've used R before, I'm sure they know what I'm talking about. So there's the aspect of it being like a functional language. It behaves like a functional language. Okay. Manyumba, do you want to, if you need some assistance, please explain where it's saying not connected. Which window? Is it in the browser or in the black screen
or where is it saying that? Using the browser. And someone saying kindly share the interface you are working on. Has anyone ever encountered that case where it says not connected? Because I'm thinking that maybe the service for this Jupyter notebook is the one that might not be running. If you launch Jupyter notebook, you can try launching Jupyter notebook again. Go to the Windows search, right? Windows search box, and you type Jupyter notebook again. And you try to run it again. And Mutena, I'm not sure whether you want me to share the installation file or you want me to share the screen that I'm working on. Because I'm switching from one screen to another. But okay, I forgot to share the screen after. Oh, sorry about that. Thanks, Mutena, for highlighting that. Okay, so maybe let me. I was mentioning, but I wasn't. So I was saying that you can see that with Python, if I say 1 and I say enter, and I say run, it is just displaying 1. Okay, and if I say let's move this up. And if I say 1 + 1, or 1 + 2, it's saying 3. Why? It's just interpreting what I've done, what I've said, without the compilation. And I said, for those of us who use Python, R, and others, functional languages. Functional languages are those languages that are used especially for applications that are related to mathematical computations. Okay, so Python is demonstrating how it works like those functional languages. Okay, so I hope we are together so far. No one is lost. So Manyumba, you can tell us what happens when you try to run Jupyter Notebook again. Then, so there's one aspect of Python that makes it behave like a functional language. And I said an example is R. Not sure about. Okay, maybe let's just proceed. And then here is some code. I is equal to 100, P is equal to 15.4. And then we have type I. Maybe let's just say print the type of I, so that you understand what we're doing. And then we'll say Q is equal to I plus P, print Q is equal to print. So here we already have the task of having to interpret everything that we have there ourselves, especially for those who've never done programming. Okay, so you need to understand why we're saying I is equal to 100 and why are we saying P is equal to 15.4. Okay, and then why we're saying print type I and so forth. Now in Python, or in every language, we have to reserve some space in memory, which we use for storing values. Okay, we have to reserve some space in memory, which we use for storing values. And this space is what we are referring to as a variable. How do we recognize this space? We recognize the space by giving it a name, any simple name that you choose. Here, the name that I chose to store
some data, which is just this value 100. I called it I. Okay. So we can think of this as creating space in memory to store a value of data code which I am calling I. Okay, so that is what a variable is. Creating space in memory to store some data or some value, and that I'm recognizing it with the name I. Okay, so that's what a variable is. Okay, so Manyumba, what you can copy this here. Okay, just copy that and try to use that. So I hope we've understood what we're referring to as a variable. Okay, now you might also wonder, how come I'm writing something here inside of my code? This is what we call a comment. A comment is some statements that you put inside your code, which is not going to be interpreted by the compiler because we have enclosed it using this hashtag. Okay. When we say hash, it means that what is coming after that is a comment. In other words, the compiler should not even worry about that, should not even try and understand that which is being supplied there. That is what we are referring to as a variable. The variable is I. Okay. Now we've created space in memory and stored the value 100. And we've created some more space and stored the value 15.4. This time, the space we called it P. Okay. This time we called it P and we stored the value of 15.4. Okay. And after that, we are saying print the type of I. This is a keyword which the interpreter can understand. Okay. And this is a keyword which the interpreter can understand. If, for example, if I'm talking to you in Shona, or if I'm talking to you in English, and I say, how are you, Nasi? Okay, you understand, if you're in English, then you understand how are you, but the Nasi you won't understand, okay, because Nasi is not included in the dictionary of English. Okay, so there are keywords in the language Python, which the interpreter is going to understand automatically when it encounters that word. When it encounters the word print, it knows that the task is to print something, to display something onto console. And when I say console, I mean on maybe the command prompt window or the display window. Okay, so that key print word is recognized, and the function print, it is working with a predefined syntax. In other words, when you write print, print, automatically you're supposed to put brackets, which are going to be the brackets contain what needs to be printed. Okay, inside the brackets, you need to specify what needs to be printed automatically. When you are saying you want to print, the next question is what is supposed to be printed. Okay, And so in the brackets, we have put type I. Type is also another keyword which is recognized in Python. And when we're saying the type of I, we are trying to extract, we want the compiler to tell us what is the data type of I. Not talking about the data type, we are referring to those data types. We're referring to this data that we want to store. What type of data it is. For example, does it have a floating point value? That is, does it have a decimal value? Sorry. Or does it have, is it a very huge number? Or is it perhaps a string and not a number? That is what we are referring to as the type of the data. Okay. So far, I hope we are together. We're still following. Okay, the guy said yes. Mary saying everything is good. Although I'm not sure whether in our dictionary of English we do have the so far so good. But I suppose I understand what you mean. Okay, Jackson saying managed to get the correct platform. All right. I think most people are just saying that they are following. I think there's someone. Unfortunately, sometimes we have to. Okay. So I think we can proceed. So I think you can see that there's nothing complicated about programming. I think you just you agree with me. Someone is saying, what is the meaning of the type of I? Which I just explained just now. I think anyone can respond to Tena on the chat platform. Is anyone willing to respond to what Tina just asked? Because I explained that just now. So I was hoping that okay. So I'm not sure if Tena is convinced. I think from the responses that have been supplied.
Okay, so now I see someone's already asking about the code that's following. So it's okay. Then we created another variable, and in this variable we want to store store the value of this variable data together added with that other variable. So whatever the result of that addition, we want to store it in Q. Okay, another variable called Q. So okay, some 10. Okay, so let's move on. Here we're saying Q is equal to I plus P. Oh, we did, apparently our interpreter does understand symbols such as plus, minus, times, and so forth. They are understood. Their keywords in the program itself, in the Python dictionary itself. Okay, so if you want to do an addition, you can use plus sign, like we did here. We just said 1 plus 2, and it was able to supply the answer to us. Okay, and so here we said Q is equal to I plus P. We're saying we want to create another variable called Q. You can see that when you want to create a variable in Python, you don't need to, for those of us who have done programming before, you normally declare the variable before you use it. But in Python, you don't declare, you just create the variable when you're using it. Okay. And then when you are doing what you call the assignment. So we're assigning a value of the sum of those two variables to another variable Q. Okay. So, and then we said print Q is equal to Q. Someone was saying, what's the purpose of the second Q inside the statement? It's very simple. The good thing about programming is you can learn by doing. For example, in your case, you could remove the second Q. And you can see that the second Q was not enclosed inside these single quotation marks, but it was outside. And not only was it outside, but there was also a comma before we put the second Q. So maybe you can just run now this code. Sorry, I think I pressed the wrong. You can see that after running that code, we are just having Q is equal to and nothing else afterwards. Okay. What has happened? The variable itself, we could not put it inside this single quotation mark. Why? Because if we put it there and we say Q, it's just going to, I'm sure you can predict what's going to happen. Okay, someone had already mentioned that. I suppose it's Mr. Tambora. He said anything in quotes will be printed as it is. So the first Q in quotes will be printed as Q. The second Q is to call the value that has been assigned to Q, which is I plus P. You see? So I think that's exactly what we are saying. We want to display not Q, but we want to display the value of Q, what is contained inside that variable. For us to do that, we don't just put Q there, because if we do that, if we run this, you can see that it's just saying Q is equal to Q. So we don't just put Q there, but what we do is we put it outside that bracket and we say Q, like that. Okay. So now it's displaying on 15.4 instead of Q. And where did this 115.4 come from? That's 100, which is I, plus 15.4, which is P. So it's saying it's equal to 115.4. And so the type of I, which is the first one, is an integer or integer value. The type of Q is a float, which is a floating point value. Okay, and I think I talk about that a bit later on. Okay, so so far I think as others have mentioned, I hope it's so far so good again. Right, so
And we also have another statement where you say print =n and q is a, and then we have type of q. I think the new thing that we've introduced there is the =n. And because of this =n, you can see that what the effect of that is we have omitted a line. So sometimes when you are printing to console, you have these escape sequence. We call them escape sequence characters, which are special characters that can be interpreted inside of the single quotation marks. You can see that we had the =n, but the =n is not in the output. So it's just interpreted as an attempt to go to the next line. It means go to the next line when printing. Otherwise, if we don't put this =n, maybe, I think the best thing is a demonstration. We can see that one line is being removed. Okay, so and further saying, where did we request for the class of Q? I think you see where we said type Q. Okay, that's where we. So in response to that is saying class. The class of that variable is n float. Okay. Anything else? Right. So I think we can proceed. Or do we need a little break? It's 120 minutes now. It's about 2 hours. So it seems like Michael Mtena wants to share some coffee with us. I think that would be welcome. Okay, so, but the only challenge is it's like people are for the idea of coffee. The challenge that I would prefer to end the meeting, which allows us to stop the recording for now. Okay, so that what we have recorded so far will then be rendered and shared. So it means that when you come back, you then have to join again. Is that okay with everyone? So that I don't pause, because if I pause at the end of the day, I'll have such a long video. Okay. So I know some were also saying that they would really love for the recordings because they will not be able to join the lectures. So it's not a problem. Okay. So we come back in 15 minutes. Okay. So we can come back in 15 minutes. So, okay. So I'm ending the meeting. Enjoy your coffee.